The average American earning $95,000 a year should be comfortable. That number puts you solidly in the top 30% of all earners in this country. You're above the median household income by nearly $20,000. You are, by every official government definition, a high earner. And yet, 44% of people making six figures are living paycheck to paycheck right now. Not low-income earners. Not minimum wage workers. People making over $100,000 a year. That number should bother you, because it means income alone isn't the answer. And somewhere between the salary and the bank account, something is quietly draining the life out of people's financial futures. My name is Felix, and I create simple, easy-to-understand animated videos about money and personal finance. If that sounds like something useful to you, consider subscribing. It costs you nothing, and it might save you quite a bit. Now, before we go any further, I want you to think about the last time you had a genuinely terrible day at work. Maybe your manager tore apart a project you spent weeks on. Maybe you sat through back-to-back meetings that could have been emails. Maybe a client called to complain about something that wasn't even your fault. Whatever it was, by the time you drove home, your brain was done. And what did you do? If you're honest, you probably spent money. Maybe it was a nice dinner out. Maybe it was ordering something you didn't technically need. Maybe it was a new pair of shoes, or a gadget, or a subscription you added because you just wanted something good to happen that day. And here's the thing, in that moment, it felt completely justified. Because you earned it. You put in the hours. You suffered through the misery. You deserve a reward. That thought, that specific thought, I earned this, is costing high-income earners tens, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of their lives. And today we are going to pull it apart piece by piece. I call this the deferred life tax. And it doesn't care how hard you work. In fact, the harder you work, the worse it gets. We're going to cover 4 things today. First, why your brain uses your own work ethic against you. Second, what this pattern looks like in the real numbers of a real household. Third, the 2 invisible forces that supercharge the deferred life tax into something genuinely catastrophic. And fourth, what to actually do about it, starting this week. Let's start with the brain. There is a very real, very well-studied psychological mechanism at work here. And once you understand it, you will never look at your spending the same way again. Here is what happens inside your brain on a hard day at work. Your body releases cortisol. That's the stress hormone. And when cortisol floods your system, it does something fascinating and destructive at the same time. It suppresses your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning, impulse control, and rational decision-making. And simultaneously, it activates your limbic system, the ancient, emotional, survival-focused part of your brain. In other words, stress biologically turns off your financial judgment and turns on your emotional reaction system at precisely the moment when you are most likely to make a financial decision. That is not an accident of character. It is not a personal weakness. It is neurochemistry. And what does your emotional brain want after a stressful day? It wants a reward. Not tomorrow. Not in 10 years when the retirement account is big. Now, it wants the dinner, the purchase, the experience. Something that signals to your exhausted cortisol-soaked nervous system that the suffering was worth it. Psychologists Philip Brickman and Donald Campbell identified this in 1971. They called it the hedonic treadmill. The basic idea is this. Your brain adapts to pleasure almost immediately. The new thing stops feeling new. The reward stops feeling like a reward. And so you need the next reward to maintain the same feeling. This is the core engine of the deferred life tax. Your brain takes the legitimate suffering of a hard week, the real effort, the real sacrifice, the real stress, and converts it into a justification for spending that feels moral, that feels earned. Because the logic is airtight, isn't it? You did on it. You are working hard. You deserve something good. The problem isn't the desire. The problem is what that desire is doing to your financial future while your brain isn't looking. Researchers at LendingTree found that nearly 63% of Americans admit their emotions drive their purchase decisions. 45% of Americans specifically report shopping after a bad day or bad week at work. 45%. And the average American makes 107 of these emotional purchases every single year, spending over $4,500 annually on what researchers now formally call retail therapy. 107 times a year, your brain cashes in the check your hard work wrote. And nobody, not one person in that transaction, has an incentive to tell you it's happening. Now, you might be thinking, okay, $4,500 a year is rough, but it's not life-ruining. And you're right, if it stopped there, it would be annoying, not catastrophic. But the deferred life tax has a second mechanism. And this one is far more dangerous, because every time your income goes up, your brain recalibrates what you has earned. Think about the first apartment you rented. If you're honest, it was probably modest, maybe a little rough around the edges. But you were proud of it, right? You had your own place. That felt like an achievement. Then you got a raise, and the modest apartment started to feel like something you'd outgrown. You moved somewhere nicer. More space, better neighborhood, higher rent. Then another raise. And the nicer apartment started to feel normal. The new car you bought started to feel like just a car. The restaurant you used to consider a treat became a Tuesday night. This is exactly what Brickman and Campbell predicted in 1971. They called it adaptation. What was once a luxury becomes a baseline. And what was once a baseline becomes something you can't imagine giving up. The American Psychological Association has even developed a formal scale to measure this. They call it the SSA SAY scale, or the shopping to sow the affective state scale, to track how people use spending to manage emotional states, because this is now recognized as a genuine psychological behavior pattern, not just a bad habit. Here's what makes this relevant today. A Lending Club survey found that in 2025, 51% of Americans earning over $100,000 a year said they're living paycheck to paycheck. 51%. Not people living on $35,000. People earning six figures. And a Harris poll found that 3 out of every 4 six-figure earners had recently used a credit card because they ran out of cash. So we have a country full of hardworking, intelligent, genuinely high-earning people who are somehow producing almost nothing in the way of lasting financial security. And the deferred life keeps getting paid for. Every single month. Let me introduce you to a household we'll call the Marshalls. Marcus and Diane Marshall. They earn a combined $95,000 a year. That is real money. That is above the national median. That is above the national median. They are not struggling in any conventional sense. They work hard. They are good at their jobs. They believe, and this is the critical part, that they are being financially responsible. Let's run the math that Marcus and Diane have never actually done. $95,000 a year in gross income. Before anything reaches their bank account, here is what disappears. Federal income tax on a joint return. Roughly $7,000. FICA. Social Security and Medicare. Another $7,200. State income tax, let's say they're in a moderate state, around $4,500. That's roughly $18,700 gone before they see a single dollar. Their take-home pay is approximately $76,300 a year, or about $6,360 a month. Now, $6,360 a month sounds workable, right? Let's see what happens to it. Rent or mortgage. And they bought a modest home, because that's what you're supposed to do. $1,850 a month. That was a responsible decision. That's what they were approved for. But every month, $1,850 disappears. $6,360 minus $1,850, that leaves $4,510. They're 2 cars, both financed. The average new car payment in America right now is $741 a month, according to Edmunds. Marcus bought new. His payment is $649. Diane kept her older car and is paying $380. That's $1,029 in car payments every month. Plus insurance for both vehicles and auto insurance for a couple with 2 financed cars is averaging around $450 a month in 2026. That's $1,479 combined in vehicle costs. $1,510 minus $1,479. That leaves $3,031. Groceries for 2 adults. Average household of two spends about $700 a month these days. That's gone. $3,031 minus $700. That leaves $2,331. Utilities, electricity, gas, water, internet, phone. A reasonable combined total is around $450 a month. $2,331 minus $450, that leaves $1,881. Health insurance, because Diane's employer only covers partial, another $320 a month out of pocket. $1,881 minus $320, that leaves $1,561, and we have not yet touched dining out, streaming services, clothing, Amazon orders, the weekend trip because they had a brutal month and needed to decompress, the birthday gifts, the home repair because something broke, the credit card minimum payment from the last time something broke. But here's the thing. Let's just focus on dining out because this is where the deferred life tax shows its face most clearly. The average American spends $191 per person per month on restaurant dining. For two people, that's $382 a month. And here is what they never say out loud, but feel constantly. They're both working hard, both stressed, both deserve a nice dinner after a rough week. So that $382 estimate, it's probably conservative for the Marshalls. $1,561 minus $382 for dining. That leaves $11,179. Personal spending, clothing, personal care, subscription services, Amazon, the small purchases, another $400 each per month. Two people who work hard and feel they've earned it, $800 total. $1,179 minus $800. That leaves $379. $379 remaining out of $95,000 a year. And I haven't mentioned the weekend they spent in the mountains after the worst quarter of their careers. I haven't mentioned the new couch that replaced the perfectly fine old couch. I haven't mentioned the 3 streaming services they forgot they subscribed to. I haven't mentioned the $73 Marcus spent on a gadget last Tuesday because he had a terrible meeting that morning. But it gets worse. Because that $379 isn't savings. That's the buffer. And the moment car tires wear out, or the HVAC acts up, or there's a medical copay, or a friend's wedding requires a flight, that buffer doesn't just shrink, it goes negative. And the credit card absorbs it. This is how a household earning $95,000 a year builds almost nothing. Now let me show you the invisible cost. The number that nobody ever calculates. Because this is where it goes from uncomfortable to genuinely heartbreaking. Let's say the Marshalls found $500 a month. Just $500 to consistently invest. Maybe they kept the used car. Maybe they stopped the daily lunch delivery habit. Maybe they cooked on Thursdays instead of ordering out for the 3rd time that week. $500 a month, invested in a basic index fund averaging 8% annual returns. After 10 years, just under $91,000. After 20 years, just over $294,000. After 30 years, $745,000. $745,000 from $500 a month. Now, here's the brutal irony of the deferred life tax. Over those same 30 years, the Marshalls will spend an average of $4,500 a year on emotional purchases, the retail therapy, the reward dinners, the I earned this moments. That's $135,000 in nominal dollars spent on short-term mood management. Experiences they mostly don't remember 3 months later. That $135,000 in emotional spending, if it had been invested instead, would have grown to somewhere around $680,000. Let me say that number clearly. The Marshalls are potentially choosing $135,000 in momentary comfort over $680,000 in lifetime financial security. Not because they're being reckless, not because they don't understand money, but because their brain is running a script that tells them the spending is deserved. Now, you might be thinking, well, this is obviously about the expensive cars or the big house. If they just bought less car, the math changes. And you are not wrong. But I want you to notice something. The Marshalls aren't making one catastrophic financial mistake, they're making 100 tiny ones. Each one is perfectly rational, in isolation. Each one is individually defensible. The dinner out after a long week. The car that's a little nicer than necessary. The couch that was on sale. The vacation because it was either that or implode. It's not any single decision that's the problem. It's the permission execution that the brain has built around the idea of deserving. And here's where the second invisible force comes in. The deferred life tax compounds. Not just financially, psychologically. Here is what it feels like to be the Marshalls at 45 after years of this pattern. It feels like checking your bank account and feeling a quiet dread, even though you've been working hard your entire adult life. It feels like looking at a coworker who makes less than you and wondering how they seem less financially stressed than you are. It feels like knowing you should be saving more, but feeling so exhausted from working so hard that the idea of giving up the few things that make the grind feel worth it is genuinely depressing. It feels like being one car repair away from using a credit card, then using the credit card, then feeling guilty about using the credit card, then having a hard day at work and needing a reward to feel better, then spending money again. This is the deferred life tax spiral, and it doesn't discriminate based on income. According to Goldman Sachs, households in America earning over $300,000 a year reported higher rates of living paycheck to paycheck than households making $50,000 to $100,000. $300,000 a year and still finding it tough to make progress on any long-term financial goals. That's not a budgeting problem. That's a permission structure problem. There is a second dimension to this that almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most expensive part. We don't just spend money to feel rewarded after a hard day. We spend money to project who we are to the people around us. The car isn't just a car. It's a signal. It says, I've made it, I'm doing well. I operate at a certain level. The nice restaurant isn't just dinner. It's a statement about the kind of person you are and the kind of life you lead. There is a term for this in behavioral economics. Social signaling. And it costs a fortune. Here's a real example. The average new car buyer in America paid $49,353 for their vehicle in February 2026. That is the national average, not a luxury vehicle, not a status symbol. The average, and over 20% of new car loans right now have monthly payments exceeding $1,000 a month. Think about what's happening there. $1,000 a month on a depreciating asset. That's $12,000 a year. That's $60,000 over 5 years. And the car was worth roughly $34,000 the moment it left the dealer's lot. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you should drive a beater with no air conditioning and apologize for it. That's not realistic, and it's not what this is about. But I will tell you this. The person driving the paid-off 5-year-old car and quietly investing $700 a month is building something real. And the person pulling into the same parking lot in the $49,000 financed truck, looking like they've got it together, is potentially $700,000 poorer by retirement. That car payment isn't just costing money, it's costing a future. And the cruelest part? The dopamine hit from the new car lasts about 8 weeks. Researchers call this point hedonic adaptation. After 8 weeks, the new car is just the car. The excitement is gone. The payment stays. You spent $49,000 on something that stopped making you happy in 2 months, but the payment will make you broke for 5 years. Here's the thing they never told you, and this is important. You are not bad with money. You're not lazy. You're not irresponsible. You are a hardworking person responding exactly the way your brain is designed to respond to a system that was absolutely not designed with your long-term financial wellness in mind. Think about how the entire economy is structured around you in a workday. The food delivery app that lets you skip cooking after you're exhausted from work. The car commercial that says you've earned the upgrade. The credit card offer that arrives in the mail addressed to someone who deserves the best. The phone notification from your favorite retailer telling you there's a sale. On the same day you had a terrible meeting. None of that is coincidence. None of that is neutral. The entire commercial infrastructure around daily life is built to intercept the moment of maximum emotional spending, vulnerability, and convert it into a purchase. You didn't design this system. But right now, without realizing it, you're funding it. The question is not whether you deserve nice things. You do. Everyone who works hard deserves to enjoy the results of their effort. The question is, what does reward actually mean when you're truly financially free versus when you're quietly running in place? The person who has $500,000 in investments at 45 can take an actual vacation without putting it on a credit card. They can take a month off if they burn out because they have financial runway. They can say no to a toxic job because they have options. That's what a reward actually looks like. Ordering delivery 4 nights a week and driving a truck you can't comfortably afford is not a reward. It's debt disguised as comfort. The marshals, if they don't change the permission structure, will spend 30 more years working hard and ending up with almost nothing to show for it. Not because they didn't earn money, they earned plenty of money, but because they spent every "I earned this" moment spending that money away. So, what do you actually do about this? I'm going to give you 3 specific moves. Not theory, not vague advice. Concrete, numbered steps. Step 1, name the trigger, not the purchase. This week, not next month, not when things calm down. This week, every single time you are about to make a purchase that is not groceries or a scheduled bill. Pause and ask yourself one question. Am I buying this because I need it or because I'm compensating for something that happened today? That's it. Just name it. You don't have to stop the purchase. Just name the trigger first. Research from behavioral psychologists found that simply labeling an emotional state before acting on it reduces the intensity of that impulse by up to 30%. Just saying the words, out loud or in your head, "I'm tired and stressed, and I want to feel better," before reaching for the app or the menu or the cart, changes something. Most people who do this for 1 week find at least 3 purchases they can skip without missing them at all. Step 2. Design the reward in advance. Here is a smarter version of "I earned this." Instead of letting your depleted, cortisol-soaked brain decide what you deserve at the end of a terrible Thursday, you decide in advance, when you're calm and thinking clearly, what your actual rewards look like. Sit down this weekend and make a list. What are the 5 experiences or purchases that genuinely bring you sustained enjoyment? Not the impulse thing you forget about in a week. The things that actually make your life better. For a lot of people, that list includes travel, connection with people they love, a few specific hobbies, maybe a nice meal out, but one that's intentional and savored, not the 4th delivery order of the week. Budget for those specially. Put real money toward them. Give them a spot in your monthly plan. What you find almost universally is that your deliberate rewards cost less and feel more meaningful than the scattered impulse spending. Because you anticipated them. Because they mean something. Step 3. Automate the first 15%. This is the most powerful step, and the most ignored. Before you pay a single bill, before you buy a single item, before the money hits your checking account and enters the gravitational pull of daily life, automate 15% of your gross income directly into investments. For the marshals at $95,000 a year, that is $1,187 a month, into a 401k, an IRA, a brokerage account, whatever vehicle makes sense for your situation. But it moves before you can spend it, before the week starts, before the bad Tuesday happens, before your brain gets a chance to earmark it for a reward. The reason this works is brutal in its simplicity. You will adapt to whatever is left. Just like your brain adapts to the new car becoming normal, it adapts to your take-home being slightly lower. The discomfort lasts about 30 days. The wealth compounds for 30 years. At a $1,087 a month invested from age 30 to age 60. To age 60, at the historical average index fund, return of roughly 8%, you are looking at approximately $1.76 million. $1.76 million. From a household earning $95,000 a year, the money was always there. It was just being redirected by the permission structure. If 15% feels impossible right now, start at 5% today. Not next month. Today. Set up the automation, let it run, and increase it by 1% every 3 months until you hit 15%. You will barely feel the individual increments. You will absolutely feel the outcome in 10 years. Let me bring you back to where we started. 44% of six-figure earners living paycheck to paycheck. 3 out of 4 people making over $100,000 recently using a credit card because they ran out of cash. A country full of genuinely hardworking, genuinely talented people working harder and harder while somehow building less and less. This is not a failing of effort. It is a failure of the permission structure the brain builds around effort. The deferred life tax is real, and it is paid not in one dramatic moment of financial recklessness, but in 100 small, perfectly justified moments. The dinner after the terrible day, the car upgrade after the promotion, the weekend away after the brutal quarter, each one individually reasonable. Collectively, a fortune spent on comfort that faded in weeks, while the financial future it could have funded fades for decades. Here is what I want you to walk away with. You are not being asked to stop enjoying your life. You are being asked to stop paying a tax on the hardest parts of it. Real rewards are things that grow. Real rewards are the moment at 52 when you realize you don't have to work anymore. You choose to. Real rewards are the Tuesday morning you wake up and something that would have terrified you 5 years ago now just feels like a problem you can calmly handle because you have financial runway underneath you. That version of yourself exists. The path there is not about suffering more. It is about making sure the suffering you're already doing is building something real, not subsidizing a system designed to convert your exhaustion into profit for someone else. The math is there. The steps are there. The only thing left is the decision. If this video gave you something real to think about, I would genuinely appreciate a subscription. I make these videos because I believe the information in them is worth understanding. And the next one just might be the one that changes something important for you. I'll see you there.